Hello and welcome to Digital Photo Mentor Live. This week we are going to be talking about and looking at landscape photography images. You all have come through amazingly and sent me some fabulous photos to look at with some great questions. So we're going to approach it a little bit differently today, and I'm going to go directly into your questions and apply them to your images and answer the questions that you asked. It's a bad hair day, Holly says from New Jersey. Uh-oh, is it a little bit on the windy side? I literally just pulled a hair out because it was sticking out. So I was having a bad hair day too. But I combed my hair actually for today. So combed my hair. Roger, got back from Alaska. Lots of landscape photos. Awesome. We just got back from Alaska last month as well. And Deb is in Alaska. So lots of Alaska themes today. And of course, we've got Stephanie from Oregon. I've got some of your images. Hey, David. Rainy Ottawa. It's looking like it might rain here in Edmonton as well. We're going to barbecue afterwards. Rob's going to make some burgers. Good evening, Deb from warm Wisconsin. Welcome. And Marguerite and Sault Ste. Marie. So we've got hot Ontario in the house for sure tonight. All right. So as we are going to get started. Do we have anything we want to ask them right off the bat, Rob? I know you said that there was a poll that you wanted them to answer on the live page. In terms of what is the best time, because we're finding that obviously there's not a lot of people here today, so maybe this is not the best time. We're trying to play with different time zones so that we can incorporate what's a good time to pick up Australia, for example, for those of you who are located down under, and other places that are in different time zones. So if you could send them that, what is the best day of the week? Rob says. So give the video a thumbs up. Warrenton MO. I'm not sure. Is that Missouri? I'm not sure what MO stands for. Sorry. Thanks, Lee. we cried in our beverages on Monday, but overall they had a great season and we're proud of our team. So appreciate that. Let's see. Okay. Rob has posted the link, so if you could all just check that out and tell us what is the best time and date. Confirm, Missouri. Okay. I wasn't sure. I don't know all of the state abbreviations, so wasn't sure on that one. All right, so let me hop over here to get out of Luminar. Oops, where did it go? I have no idea where that just went. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to get into Lightroom. So these are the fabulous photos that were submitted this week. And I'm going to start with these ones from Stephanie. And her question was about, these were taken at golden hour, how to best bring that out using Lightroom. So let's start with that. It looks like, I'm going to guess this is maybe Africa. Is it the Serengeti? Let us know where you took these, Stephanie. That would be awesome. And I can imagine a lion prowling around here somewhere. So how to bring out golden hour. Let's start with this one. And then I'll move into this one, okay? Because they're very different. So first of all, I'm always going to start with changing the camera profile. And as you can see, just doing that brings out a lot more contrast. So shifting it to the landscape profile for your camera, which is Canon, gives us more green and yellow and brings out the sky, right? Then the next thing we can do, obviously, is shift the white balance, right? We can make it more warm, but I don't want to go too warm because then the sky becomes yellow, right? So we want to have a balance between getting some warmth on the trees and keeping the sky blue, okay? Another thing we can do to adjust color, I'm just going to kind of run through all of the different color tools that you can use in Lightroom. I think I actually did a video on this for Luminar, Rob. If you could please look that up. And she has confirmed, yes, Serengeti and Gorogora Crater. So I believe Rob has been there and seen some water buffaloes and so on. Okay, so the next thing you can do in terms of changing color is the curves tool. So you can go into the different color curves and adjust, for example, the highlights more yellow, which is the trees, and then keep the shadows cleaner, right? So see what that's doing is I'm giving some yellow to the highlights, which brings out a bit more of that gold in the clouds and the trees, but keeping the trees and the mountains in the background a bit more neutral or blue. Okay, so let's just take it more extreme so you can see what's happening here. Okay, so if we go really extreme, there we go. I could do the same and give the highlights a bit more green. Okay, so I'm sort of doing these curves here to give a tint to the highlights and the shadows. Okay, so that's affecting the color. And make note when you do this, you're also affecting the contrast. So just be conscious of that. Okay, I'm going to come back to basic here and just do the shift double click trick. So let's just add some blacks and whites. And of course, I'm always going to bring the blacks down so that I have some clipping. Let's do a little bit of clarity, because when we have the blacks clipping like this, you're going to get more intense color. Okay, so already from before to after, we've got more gold. Okay, and I didn't really change this much. Okay, so let's just go back to the way that the white balance was shot. Let's just see how many ways we can shift the color without touching white balance. Okay, so already we do have more color. Okay, I'm not crazy about what I did here with this green, so I'm just going to undo this one. Okay, but I do like what it's doing here with the gold color. Okay, we could give it a bit of red too. Not so much either. No. See, I'm giving it red, not a lot crazy about it. So try it, don't like it. Right. Next, we could go into the color mixer, which is the old HSL tool. Okay, if you want the point color tool, we can get really specific and adjust the color on the trees. Okay, so we can use point color, and then let's click on this tree. You can see the close up there. Right now, when you select this here, visualize range. That's what we're going to be working on. So anything I do up here, okay, is going to affect only the parts that are currently in color. Okay, so I can shift this around and say, well, I want less orange or more orange. I want the trees. Okay, make sure I've got the trees less. Maybe I don't want to affect the green as much. Okay, so you can decide how far you want to go with these things and adjust what colors are being affected. Now I can give it more saturation. I can shift the color one way or the other. So notice this way makes more red, a little bit of gold. Okay, so giving that a bit more golden color that you wanted. You can also brighten it. Okay, if I turn off this visualize range, let's see what this is doing. So before and after. See, it's giving you that golden glow that you're looking for. Okay, and it's only affecting this area. Now, if we want to do a second one, let's do another one, and let's affect these, maybe these bluish, dark bluish tones. Okay, I'm going to do visualize again. And oh, there's a rainbow up there, it looks like. That's interesting. Okay, let's get a little bit more of these darker tones. There we go. That looks better. Trying to get it so that this is not showing a rainbow. I want more color here. There we go. Okay, so now it's going to affect this area. And I've got the area selected. Now I can do saturation. I can do luminance. Okay, if I darken it, look what happens to the trees. Okay, darkening the sky and these blue tones really brings out the trees even more. Okay, I think there is a natural rainbow there. There is a rainbow there. Interesting. Okay, so see what this color mixer is doing. So I'm simultaneously brightening the trees while darkening the blues and the mountains in the sky. Okay. Okay, another thing that we can do to adjust color is color grading. Okay, so anything obviously that has color in the name is going to affect color. Now we have the option of working on highlights, midtones, or shadows. So I'm going to go straight to the highlights and I'm going to give them a golden color and then just add some saturation. Okay, so see how that's again affecting the trees. But let's say I want the same. Let me go back here and get the color. So hue 49, I'm just making note of what color I'm using. Ah, the same. Okay. I can give more gold into the midtones. Okay. Actually, let's darken the midtones. So another place where you can adjust the brightness of the midtones as well. Okay, so see what that's doing. Again, more gold. Okay. But we're not done yet. There's one more tool that people often forget about that it's here, and that is the bottom one, calibration. Okay. Make sure that you're on the current version. So that just means that Lightroom is updated and it's using the current version of the tool. Okay. Now we can set how do we want the shadows to be adjusted. We can have them shifted green or magenta. Okay. And then we can adjust each of the red, green, and blue tints. So I can say, well, I want red to be more towards this direction. Right? See how it's affecting all of those areas? I can say I want green to be more yellow or more cyan. Okay, so you can really affect the shift of your images. This is where you would come to do if you want, say, for example, like an orange teal type of effect. Okay, so that's like a LUT that you can apply in Luminar, but you can also do the same kind of thing here. Okay, I'm just going to reset that. I'm not sure it's doing exactly what I like here. Maybe a little bit more yellow. Okay, but don't forget about that. So let's take a look at the before, kind of dullish, right? And we haven't touched white balance. So now let's go back, give it a little more gold with the white balance. There we go. And that looks pretty good. Right? I do find that the midtones in the sky have gone a bit yellow because we went extreme with the yellow. So I can do a sky mask. Let's see what it picks up. It's picking up some of the mountains down here, but let's see what happens here. I'm just going to add some blue back. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I can minus it from here if I want. So I can just say, let me subtract, and I'm going to use a linear gradient. I'm just going to say I don't want anything affected below here. Okay. So now my mask is only affecting everything from here up. Okay. See that? It's getting rid of that area there. Okay. Let's call this sky. And there we go. Okay. Now, let's see what happens if we take this same recipe and apply it to the other image, even though it's very different. Okay. Now, the image is already selected in the film strip down here. Oh, you guys can't see me. See it? Let me get out of the screen. Can you see the image down here? Okay. So let me get back over here. The image is already selected, the next one in the film strip. Okay. So I'm just going to sync and I'm going to check all. Because I haven't done any cropping or any of that stuff or cloning. So I'm just going to select all. And then let's go to the next image and see how it worked out. All right, here's the next image. Looks pretty golden to me. There's the before and after. Okay, so there's lots more gold. Might have even gone a little too far with this one. And we have a sky mask, right? And I'm going to add a little more drama into the sky with some dehaze, like that. See that? And let's just bring the highlights down a bit. I want to brighten this foreground a bit as well. So we can do, let's see what it thinks is the subject. The tree, no. So let's do a linear gradient. up to about there, right? And I'm just going to brighten it all up. Right. Then if the yellow has gone too far, we just need to go and double check. Okay, what have we done? Right? We did a color mixer and I added a bunch of saturation here. Is that the one? Yes. Okay. I also brightened the yellow. Okay. And let's see if this is doing anything on this one. Okay, so this one's not really doing anything. So we need to reselect this one. So let's do the sky again. Give it a bit more saturation. Okay, now we have a little better color. We could also work on the dark green. Oh, see, too dark. Let's try a lighter green. Let's try green. And let's add some contrast that way. I like to brighten the yellow and darken the green. And I find that that works really well to give contrast to the image overall. Okay. Let's brighten the shadows a little bit. Check the blacks, check the highlights. We can redo the shift double click. So copying and pasting from one to the other gave us a really good start. It's definitely more golden. All right, let's see what Stephanie had to say. Closer to what you remember looking like. Okay, so make note of all of those different tools that I used to adjust the color. Okay. I always forget about curves for colors. Yes, curves has colors. So I'd like to remind you. But the other good ones are the color mixer and the color grading, right? So I didn't check that one because that one could be also what is causing the problem here. So, oh, looks all right. Okay. But you see how it is adding yellow here as well, right? Maybe I don't want so much yellow in the midtones on this one. And maybe I want more yellow in the shadows, for example. Okay, see how that's adding sort of a rust color into the grass. Okay, like so. So remember all of the different tools that you have at your disposal. Do I ever use the calibration tool? As you can see, I did go to it just to show you that it's there. I actually don't use it all that often, and maybe I should. So it's a good reminder for all of us to check all of the tools that are at our disposal, right? Let's see. All right, so that is Stephanie's question. Let's head back to see what else we've got in here. Who else is here that I saw that submitted an image? I saw Marguerite and I saw Deb. Okay, so Deb, I actually already edited one of yours. And I want to show the before and the after here. And let me see. Your question was nothing specific on this one, or do you have something specific that you want to look at? Because I want to show you what I did with this one and just kind of show really quickly how I achieved that. Okay, so there's the before. Okay, it's very overcast, so it makes everything sort of flat. So what you want to do, and that was a question that somebody else had, is how to know where to start. How do you know what to edit? Okay, well, Stephanie said she wanted more gold, so we went in that direction. Okay, Deb says she wants to know how to bring out the foreground. Okay, so I have a question for you about that, Deb. So what are you calling the foreground? Are you calling the forest the foreground or the mountains? Okay, because you want to be really specific about why do you want to bring that thing out. Okay, so let's look at what I did. Okay, so I did add more punch to the trees, but what stands out the most now? Okay, the mountains. And I might even have too much drama in the sky because I added more drama in the sky here. See, I didn't name it, which is what I should have. So I knew what's what here. And I think I've got too much drama. Okay, so I darkened it. I added some dehaze. And I think I'm just going to scale it back just a tiny bit. Right, if anything, and maybe even blur the sky a little bit. Because I want the texture of the mountains to be the most important thing. So see how I can just make the clouds a little bit blurrier, almost like they're moving using this texture slider. Okay. And she says to bring out the forest. So for me, the subject of this image is definitely the mountains. Okay. The forest is the darkest thing in the picture. And if we look at the original, okay, it's still the darkest thing in the picture. So let's do the upside down thing, right? And we look at it upside down, right? And we'll go to the original. Where does your eye go? What is it that everybody else that's not that the person that it's not the person that took the photo? What is everybody else? Where do you want to look in this picture? What do you want to bring out as the subject? What do you think should be the subject? Okay. So when you look at the image upside down, that's where you're going to focus your editing. So what I did, right, was I brought out the texture of the mountains. Okay. I did bring out some of the light in the forest. Okay. And I did that a few different ways. Okay. So I increased the whites and the blacks as I usually do. I used dehaze, which actually did a great job on the sky. Okay. But it also added some darkness down here. Okay. I brought the shadows up because the forest is really dark, right? But if I bring the shadows up really high, I've also added a vignette to darken the edge. So let me just remove that. Okay. So let's just say we do want to bring the forest into emphasis. Okay. Let's take a look at what I've done here. So I did mask the forest on this mask, and I used color range and then limited it to linear gradient only on the top or the bottom of the image. Okay, so I can increase the color range so I can get more of the trees. Let's just get all the trees, right? So these are the trees. Okay, if I want to increase this, I'm going to increase the whites a lot more. But I also want to keep the contrast, okay? So see how now the forest is sort of competing with the mountains? Now I got to go back and turn off these things or edit the mountain differently. Right now I need to almost darken the mountain so that the forest is the subject. Okay. Now they're sort of competing. Okay. There's definitely more texture in the forest. I still like the edge vignette. Right. Now we've got some leading lines here. Is this Yosemite, Deb? Or is this in Alaska? This looks like Yosemite. I think is that Half Moon Dome? Right? Jim, I've got some of your images as well. Okay, so what do you guys think? I'm going to make a duplicate here, and I'm going to go back a few steps here. Okay, so we can use the history. Let's see. Where did I go? Okay, so I think this is where I was at. Yeah, I was right about here. Okay. So let's go here. So let's compare these two. Give it a second. Okay, so it's the same image, right? Different editing on the mountain, slightly, right? And the forest. Which do people prefer, left or right? And I could go and tone this mountain down a little bit more as well, okay? Because if you're wanting to bring the emphasis sort of evenly on the forest, you want to darken the other things because your eye's always going to go to those brightest areas. The forest here is always going to be a challenge to bring the eye to. People are saying the right. Okay, so they like the lighter forest. Okay. Okay, Lee says the left. I'm with you, Lee. I actually prefer the left one because when we look at them separately, okay, so if we look at them one at a time, okay, here's the first one. The left one is darker. The forest is darker. Your eye goes right to that cliff face. Okay. Now, where does your eye go? It kind of goes around the picture. So it really depends on your intention. Okay. Do you want us to focus in on that mountain? right? And title could play a role here. Like if you're going to enter this into competition or a contest, title could play a role as to how you edit this image, right? So if you want to focus on the mountain and you title it so, go with this edit. Okay? If you want sort of a more rounded area, maybe you want to call it something different, like boreal forest, can't see the trees for the forest, or rocky mountain. Well, I don't know if it's the Rocky Mountains. You tell me, right? So how you approach your edit is ultimately down to what your goal is, right? And as you indicated, the forest, we edited or changed the edit to match that. Okay, my first impression was I wanted the mountain to stand out more. Okay, so you really have to sort of start to refine what it is that you want to stand out in your image, and then use the editing tools to help do that. Does that help? Okay, let's see what else we've got. Let's see. Lee's here. Jim's here. Okay, so Jim asked about these images here, and I'm just gonna go. Let me just get this off here. Okay, so this is Radium Hot Springs, I'm guessing, because it says Radium right there. And he asked about how I would handle the background. Okay, yeah, they're all raw files, Jim. So how would you handle the background? Well, it's an interesting sort of sculpture thing. It's like meant to look like, mountain sheep horns, ram horns, but it's got all of these signs and things in the background. So it's really challenging to make the sculpture stand out. And so choosing which one I'm going to edit is going to be the first thing I do. See, I like this here for the shape of it, but now of course we've got this sign in the road. We can use the AI tools or the new remove tool to try and, get rid of that. We can also try the blur tool. Okay, so if we're going to do something with the background, let's just start with landscape again. Okay, I'm going to brighten this a little bit. I would probably darken the sky. So I have a preset that I created, which is lighten subject, darken background, and darken sky. So you can see what that does just by hovering over it. So it's kind of a little bit much, but let's just start there and see what I get. Okay, I'm going to add some blacks. I'm going to make sure I have some whites. Again, I can do the shift double click. Okay, that looks good. And I might warm it up just a tiny little bit here. It's a little on the blue side. Okay, now we can deal with this background. Okay, so what is the deal with the background? I want to make sure I've got the sky here as well. Yep, okay. So we can go down to the new lens blur. And I realize now that Jim wants to do this in Luminar. So we can do that in Luminar as well. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do this in Lightroom, and then I'll take it over to Luminar and we'll do the same kind of thing, right? I'm not a fan of this new Lightroom blur tool. Anytime I apply it, I've been putting it on grad photos that I've been working on for my nephew and his girlfriend, and the issue that I'm finding is every time I do something, if I mask something or if I use a cloning tool, it does a very weird thing where I have to keep updating the masks, the AI. And right now you can see it's kind of done a weird thing over here. So I don't know if that's, the sky mask. Maybe I need to turn that off, or I need to, make some refinements here. Something weird is going on. Okay, so I want maybe less focus. Let's try that. Something weird is going on here. Can you see that? Okay, so oops, no. Now I click there. So you have to be careful where you click because it focuses on that thing. See how it's shifted real quick? All right, so I'm going to turn off the sky mask. Let's just turn that one off. That was the one that was doing it. Okay, so we're going to leave the sky. We're going to leave that sky mask off. But see how it's got the red dot here again? I use the blur thing, the blur, lens blur, and now I have to update the AI masks again. Okay, so every time I do something with this blur thing, it keeps updating. And you can also see that it didn't get this part in here, and it's not perfect here. So the Lightroom this lens blur thing, even though it's not in the beta anymore, it's still not perfect. And I'd have to go in here and do some painting to mask it. And then I'd have to deal with this sign here. Okay. So I'm going to turn this guy off. Right. But let's take this into Luminar and see if we can do the same kind of thing. Because I like this shape of this thing. Right. So let's take it into, we're going to start from here. So I'm just going to take it directly into Luminar Neo. And there was an update for Luminar recently. And the only thing they really did was they moved some things around. Okay. Because you'll find some of the tools that were previously called extensions. Now they're under image quality, and Magic Light, which was under extensions, is now under creative. Okay, so all I did was move some stuff around. So I didn't make a video about it because literally they just moved stuff. I didn't think it was that important. Okay, so we have a couple of options here. We could try and do a background removal, or I could try and do a blur. Okay, so let's just try Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to go to extreme and then mask it off of the subject. Okay, so I'm going to use the AI masking here using object select. This is another new thing that came into Luminar recently in the masking tools, object select. So now I can add or subtract, and when you hover over an object, it selects it for you. Okay, I'm going to add this. Let me see if I can subtract that. I'm just trying to get as much of the, there we go. Okay. Now, obviously, that's opposite of what I want because I want everything else blurred. So I just need to come back to mask and invert it. Okay. Again, obviously, it was way too far, gone way too far. Okay. So let's dial that back. And then usually what I'll do is when I'm blurring something like this, the auto masking, is great as a starting point, but then I'm going to go in with the brush and I'm going to erase it sort of from the edges. So what I do is I get a super soft brush. Can you see the two circles? So the softness is dialed all the way up, and I just go around the edge. So it's basically trying to get rid of that hard edge so it doesn't look so cut out. Okay. And then there's some areas that need to be fixed also. Okay. So it's not perfect. And then, of course, we need to deal with this sign as well. Okay. I'm also going to remove some of the blur from this base here because the ground where the statue is on would not be blurry, right? Just the background. So what I usually will do is just sort of make the blur fade gradually. So I'm erasing it so it's going further away like this. Right? We could try other kinds of blurs. We could try a motion blur, up and down, or we could try a twist blur. I'm inclined to go with something more like this and make it more of an abstract. Okay, it's right in the middle. Right, so we could make this a lot more abstract. And if I'm going to go this way, I'm going to add some more blur back down here, right? So we can really just keep the sign or the statue and blur all this, and let's go abstract, okay? And that was one of your questions as well, Jim, was that would I go extreme on this one? So in this case, I think that I might, because there's so many things that are just busy in the background and in and around this subject that I would use this blur tool in this case. Can you see how I'm just painting it in to get rid of some of these things? Let's get rid of this. This guy here is going to be tricky because no matter what I do, it's still there, right? So we can sort of just embrace it. But before I disappear from here, I'm going to copy this mask, okay? And I'm going to make note. I like to go 45 degrees, okay? That'll give you the maximum amount of twist, okay? And then I'm going to do it again. So blur, twist, 45 degrees. And I copied the mask, so we'll paste it. And it just adds to the blur effect, Okay. So that's kind of cool. So I would approach this one more like this and go with something a bit more abstract. Let's add a vignette so we can, oops, that's the wrong one. Let's darken it. I like to get it nice and round. There we go. Put it centered around this guy. And then we have something very different. Okay. If you want to get rid of this thing here, you might have to take it into the generative tools and see if you can use the generative tools. I don't know that erase is going to do a decent job on this one. I think that it's just too big. Let's try and see what it does. Let's see. Fingers crossed. Yeah, see? It's just weird, right? So that's what we got. And then my masking is not perfect. I would do a better job of getting in there and painting in, right? Holly says the black and white sign looks like part of the geometry now, so it doesn't bother me at all that it's still focused. And it kind of goes out of focus, right? This is so talented. Well, it's your picture, Jim. So there you go. Okay, so take that one and see what you can make with it. Okay, the other thing you could do is take a texture and apply that on top of this as well. So you could really kind of go crazy with it. Let's see what else we got. Okay, we did Stephanie's. Let's see. Rita. Is Rita here? Yes, Rita's here, isn't she? We did Deb's. I don't know if Job's here. Marguerite's here, right? Let's see. Do you have a question? Specific question. Okay. She says, I use a 10-step neutral density filter for both images, and it leaves some areas too dark and others, like clouds, etc., not as dark and dramatic as I would like. Are these the ones that you use the neutral density on? So the thing about neutral density is it darkens everything equally. Okay, so it doesn't darken your sky. It's not a polarizing filter. It darkens everything equally. Right. So I'm just going to take a look at what she's got here because she's got 1/8 of a second at f10. Right. Interesting. So the whole image is a little bit underexposed. So if you're using a neutral density filter, make sure that you still have a good exposure, okay? Because this one is a little under. We could probably boost the exposure about like that, right? So that's a better exposure. It's about 2/3 of a stop underexposed. Okay, so if you want the sky darkened, you need something different. But I generally don't use a graduated filter. So a graduated neutral density filter is dark on one side, fading to clear, okay? And that will darken the sky. But the challenge with the neutral density grad filter is that you get a line, okay? So these trees at the top will be as dark as the sky. So personally, I prefer to use the masks in here, right? And I know that you use both Luminar and Lightroom. Okay, so we're going to just darken this. So there's the sky. Now see how it's kind of gray and it's not perfectly masked over here? We can approach that in a different way. Okay, so I use sky and it's not getting this part over here. Can you see that? So we can add to this mask, right? Let's add to this mask. We can try luminance range or color range. And I'm just going to go in here and do luminance range. Okay. I'll see how it filled that in nicely. But of course, it picked up all of this stuff down here. Right. And then I'm going to just subtract it or intersect it with the top part. Okay. So I'm just going to do a second one, which is subtract. So it's only up here. So again, it's not getting anything below this gradient. Okay. So I just wanted to pick up what it missed. And that's what this luminance range is doing. Okay. There we go. Let's fan it out a little bit, fade it. Okay, so the sky's a little bit gray. You can add color this way. So click this little box and we can actually add some color. Okay, so if you want to make it more sunset-y, we could add some orange. That looks apocalyptic. Or that's apocalyptic. There we go. We got purple, purple sky, right? Or just a hint of blue, right? Not too crazy, just a hint of blue, like so. All right. Now, if we take this one into Luminar, it has the new water enhancer, so we could change the color of the water as well. And that's another great landscape tool. So let me get out of here. Let's just add some basic edits. So this is how, again, I do my edits. So I generally do my edits in Lightroom to do basic edits like this, okay? And then I take it to Luminar to add some finishing touches. Okay, so we're brightening up those shadows a little bit. So we've got some nice detail down here. Okay, now let's see if we can make this water look less brown because it's very brown. Remember the color mixer, right? Under the traditional color mixer, I like to brighten yellow. Okay, so see how much yellow is in the water? You could probably actually affect the water this way. So the water's clear now, but it's also taken the color out of the trees. So we could use another mask, okay? I'm just going to brighten the yellow, darken the green a little bit. It is doing a little bit in these trees here. Try and get some different tones of green. That's what I'm shooting for, okay? Now, I could get more specific using the point color, okay? So let's do point color and do something yellow. So we can brighten those tones, see what difference it makes. And then do a second one where we're doing these darker greens. Oh, color is too dark. Okay. There we go. And let's darken the green. So it's giving us a little more contrast in the trees, right? Now it is affecting the water, right? So if we don't want it to affect the water, we can do the same thing by adding a new mask here. And I'm just going to do, let's do color range. So we can just select generally the greens. Okay. Let's get all of them. And then within that selection, we can still use point color. Okay. So now I can go and get that yellow. Right. We can visualize it. Right. Let's see. There we go. Let's get that. So now I can brighten the yellows. Give it more color, but I don't want it in the water, right? So all we need to do is, once again, subtract, right? So we can subtract object. I'm just going to paint over the whole water. So it'll take it all out. Okay, so put the yellow back. Okay. Now I want to do another point. That's pretty green. I'm going to do another point of just green. Color's too dark. Where are we? Color's already been sampled. Okay, let's move this guy over here. Okay, so see how that's affecting the trees? Brightening the trees, but not affecting the water. Okay. And we could do the water the same way here. Right. So if we want to, we could do select object, select the water. See if it finds all of it. Not too bad. Right. Now I can just lower the saturation, or we can shift it more to blue. I think that's probably a better idea. Let's just shift it a little blue and a little green. Okay. If I do the point color and the yellow, Oh, I missed it. Let's do another point color. Let's get something that's yellow. There we go. Take the saturation down. Let's see what that's doing to the water, taking that yellow tint out. Okay. So it's better. We could also add some blue this way. Okay. And we've got some problem areas here. It's picking up too much in the trees and it's probably too much here. So I would refine this a little better, probably just with a brush. Okay, so I'm just going to use the brush and take it off the areas that I don't want. And when I'm doing this kind of editing, I zoom in a lot. Okay, so I'm using the full image here so you guys can see what I'm doing. But when I do this, I would zoom in a lot closer so that I can see the edges, see what it's getting, and so on. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure it's not, doesn't look fake. That's my goal. Okay, see what that's doing to the water. Okay. How are we doing? So our before was really dark. Now we brought out a lot more contrast. I might add a tone curve in here overall and just punch up the contrast because I find the whole thing is just a little bit flat, especially in the midtones. Okay, so I want to increase the contrast down in this area, but keep the detail here. Okay, so let me show you what that's doing. Okay, this is a mid-tone contrast. Okay. How's that? Now we can do the same thing again. We can copy and paste, or I can just go to the next image and say previous and see what it comes up with. Okay. Obviously, we need to do some major adjusting here in terms of the masking that I've done. Yeah, that one's not doing such a good job. Neither is that one. Right. So it's doing some weird things. Okay, copy and paste didn't work so good on that one. So I would start from this. But keep in mind that when you're using a neutral density filter, all it does is gives you a slower shutter speed. It does not darken the sky. Okay. So if you want the sky darkened, that's a whole different filter. Okay. But if you use a linear gradient or a graduated filter, it's going to look like this. Okay. So they work like this, that they're darker on one end. I'm just going to go extreme. Okay. That's literally what the filter does. Okay. So it adds darkness gradually from the top of the filter down. Okay. But when you do that, let's take it back to a reasonable amount. So the sky looks great, but look what's happening to the trees. Okay. The tops of the trees get equally as dark. And when you use a filter in the field, you can't avoid that. Right. Unavoidable. Questions. Let's see. Let's see. Where are we? It was your first time visiting the park. I like the bluish look to the clouds. I like the texture of the water, but on the day I took the photo, the spring rapids were churning up sand and mud. Yeah, so that's why you got the brown, right? There was also a lot of runs in the tree needles in the foreground. I do. Yeah, we'll be watching a TV show or a movie and the sky is orange and it's midday or it's sunset-y looking, and I'm like, that's fake. That's a filter. Because you can see the tops of the buildings are dark. Watch for it. Yeah. Watch for it. You can pick it up when they filmed midday, but they want it to look like sunset. They put a filter on, and if you look at the tops of the buildings, you'll see that they're dark. It's not midday. So sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. All right, let's see. Now I've got some other great ones here from Kim. Is Kim here? I haven't seen Kim. So Kim Oh, she said there was lots of rust. I wondered about that, Marguerite. I wondered about that. Okay, so Kim's question was on the raw photo, where to start, and on the JPEG photo, I'll show you both. How to mask the foreground for overexposure on the wall and also mask the middle of the stairs to make them lighter. Okay, so in other words, two different things. Now she's using Luminar, right? So I'm going to take this directly into Luminar, right, with the raw file. So her first question is, how do we know where to start? So let's just do that. I'm going to export this into Luminar using the source file. So let's do the same thing. Let's look at it upside down. Right? Where does your eye go? Okay. So when deciding what to edit first, if you're not sure, look at it upside down. Okay. So where does your eye go? And then the second question is, where do you want the viewer's eye to go? Okay. Because if it's going to the sky, which it is right now, but you don't want it to go to the sky, if you want that boat to stand out, then we need to work on the sky to darken it, and we need to work on the boat to lighten it. Okay, so now we have two things that we know we're going to do. Okay, then we can talk about, so first thing is brightness, then we can talk about bringing out texture. So you want more texture in your subject, you want less texture in things that you don't want to be standing out. Okay, so now that we have some direction, let's see how we would go about applying that. So let's just put it back the way it was. Okay, so cropping as well, right? We could definitely crop this. I'm going to make sure it's straight. Let's try a horizon alignment. So do that first. And right now, the horizon and the boat are dead smack in the center. Okay, so when you have equal amounts of things, this is called visual mass. If you could share that article that I did on visual mass, please, Rob. When you have an equal amount of sky and water or foreground or whatever that is, the viewer doesn't know which thing has more weight, okay, because they're equal. And the tones are kind of similar at this point because we haven't edited yet, okay? So can we crop? I'm going to go off the original aspect ratio and crop this into more of a panoramic. Okay. I love the reflection. I don't want to get rid of any of the reflection. So I'm actually going to come down from the top and get rid of some of the sky. Okay. Now our horizon and our boat are on these intersecting parts of the rule of thirds. Okay. So these are what's called the PowerPoint, far more interesting points and composition. Okay. There's also kind of nothing over here, so I might come in a little bit on this side as well. Right? I like the balance of the tree over here, right? But we can also try without it. So let's try this composition first. Okay. So a little bit of a straighten and a little bit more of a panoramic view. Okay. I can already see that I think I'm not going to like this cropping, but we'll come back to it. Okay. First thing you want to do when you're working on your file and it's a raw file is go to develop raw, just like I did in basic panel in Lightroom. And you want to choose your camera profile. Okay, so hovering over, we can just take a look. Okay, this is vivid. I almost never choose the vivids. Okay, let's just take a look. Okay, this one's definitely brightening things up. Kind of like that one. And this is vivid too. It's very purpley kind of looking, and I'm not crazy about that color. Right? I don't mind this one, right? It's giving a little more contrast in the midtones and a little more color, right? Now on Luminar, we don't have the option to do the shift double click trick that we use in Lightroom, but what we can do is turn on the clipping warnings by hitting J on the keyboard. So keyboard shortcut, keyboard shortcut, PDF download link, please, Rob. So now I'm using the curves tool to tuck in the white on this side until I get some clipping. So you can see it's going off the graph. And then I'll just come back a tiny little bit. And the same on the blacks. I might even go a little bit farther because we're going to darken the sky anyways. And I'm going to bring these highlights down. Okay. Then I'm going to brighten overall a little bit. Okay. Still watching those highlights. So it's a dance. So I might bring the highlights down. I might go back off this a little bit and so on. Brighten the shadows a little bit. Okay, now we just have this tiny little bit that's got clipping. I'm not worried about that right now. Okay, just that little cloud. Okay. Now let's take a look at the color because it feels really purpley blue. Okay, so do we want less magenta? I think we do. Do we want to warm it up? Right? Look at how this changes. Changes the mood of the image completely, whether we have blue tones, so everything is blue, or we have more gold, right? Like what we did with Stephanie's image at the beginning. Totally different, right? Notice how the boat stands out more now, right? So gold makes the boat stand out. Blue makes it sort of disappear a little bit. So I kind of want to warm it up at least a little bit, okay? Keep in mind that we can also mask and shift the color of different things as well. And there's a color tool in here. So we'll come back to that one, right? Under optics, I like to just make sure that chromatic aberration is checked off just in case we have any, right? If you see chromatic aberration, it's usually going to be on the edges, especially where you have something dark against something light. So let me turn it off. Right? Can you see that there is a little bit of a purple fringe there, ever so slight? When I turn it on, it disappears. Okay. So I use this and just turn it on. Okay. Don't think we need to worry about noise reduction or any of these other things in here. Okay. So that is a good starting point. So far we've just brightened it up, added some contrast. Right. The next thing I'm going to jump to is the Enhance AI tool. This one does a great job of adding punch, right? Look what it does to the sky. And we can go even further with the sky. Be forewarned with this one. I always give warnings that this one goes overboard really easily. So keep it on the lower end. But I like what it's doing to the rest of the image, okay? And we can always mask it if we don't like it on a certain part, okay? But I think that looks pretty good. Okay. Now there's lots of sort of junk in the water down here. If I zoom in, you can see it. I think I would do a lot of work using the erase tool and cloning that out to get rid of a lot of this junk. Or I'm going to change my mind about the cropping and reposition so that I have more sky instead of more water. Okay. So now I've got, let's go even further. So I want to keep the reflection, right? But less of the water, more of the sky. Right? I think that's better, right? And less of that junk down here. We can do a vignette, but I'm going to come back to that one in a minute because I'm going to jump all the way down to my favorite tools, which are the color harmony, and we'll come back to super contrast as well. Because this one does a great job of adding contrast in different colors. Okay, so if we want the blues to stand out, right, see how that is brightening the yellows, which brings out that boat, and darkening the blues. So look what a great job that does to bringing out that boat. Okay, take it to extreme, you can see what it's doing. Now I really like what it's doing on the boat, but not so much what it's doing on the sky. Easy to fix, right? I can just say, okay, I can either mask out the sky completely with Mask AI, or I can just use a brush and erase it at 50%. So I'm just going to use a really big brush, okay, and just do one pass over the top like that. I'm going to do one more pass over the midsection of the sky here. So now it's not affecting the sky. Actually, I might have erased a little too much. Let's give it a little bit of punch in there. There we go. Okay, so it's mostly affecting the bottom part of the image. It's also bringing out these trees over here, which is kind of nice for a balance, right? I'm not crazy about this post, right? So we can actually mask it off that post as well. Okay, so again, And just get a smaller brush. Just say, no, I don't want that one to stand out as much. That one's okay. Maybe not this one. Right? So now let's see the difference. Okay. So you get to decide where it applies. It's really bringing out these boats. Isn't that nice? Okay. Now we could apply that tool a second time and go a different way with it. Right. I could say, well, I want the warmer colors to be warmer. And I want the cooler colors to be cooler. So now we're increasing that contrast yet again. Right? And further to that, we could also mask it if we want. And let me see if I go a different direction. Okay, if I go up to blue, okay, it's going to add contrast. No, that's not what I want. I think I'm happy with that. See how it's picking up a little bit of, it's giving us some highlights in the sky here. So we're going to have to fix that. Okay, so let's come back to develop. I'm just going to bring the highlights down. And I'm going to darken, and I'm going to mask it to the sky this time. Okay, so I'm using Mask AI. Wait for it. And when it comes up, I'm going to choose sky. It's missing part of the sky, but I can just mask that in with my brush. Just make sure I get that bit over there. Great. So all I'm doing here is just darkening these highlights a little bit. Okay. Making sure that I don't have clipping in the sky. Okay. That's all that is doing. Now let's add a vignette. Okay. So when I add the vignette, turn it all the way down, turn the feather all the way down, get it where you want it. Okay. Because we cropped, remember the size has to come down. That's still a pet peeve of mine with Luminar. They need to fix the post-crop vignette issue and then bring it back to something more subtle. Okay. There we go. Okay. I'm still finding a lot of contrast in the sky, so I might come back here to this develop tool that I just used. Right. And where are we here? Lower the contrast in it a little bit. There we go. See that? Okay. And then overall vignette. So let's see where we're at. So a full before and after. See what a difference that makes? We're really bringing out those boats. Okay. Really bringing out the boats. Now I want to blur that sky. I'm not crazy about what's happening in the sky. It's kind of gone a little bit grainy, I think, as well. Right. So I want to blur that sky. Luckily, we have a blur tool to do that. We could also try glow or mystical, right? Actually, let's do glow. I like Orton effect. It's one of my favorite blur techniques, but it always brightens things. So you got to bring it way down. And of course, I want to put this just on the sky. So sky. Oh, should have copied the other sky that I just did. Make sure I get all of it. Okay. See how that's just sort of softening that sky? That's better as well. We could try one of the other options. That's too gray. That's not bad. Right? So that is sort of removing a lot of that contrast from the sky that's taking the attention. So that is not bad at all. Right? We could also copy this mask, right, and try applying another one. Let's do mystical. Everybody knows how my favorite tool is mystical, right? and paste in the mask. So again, it's only applying to the sky. Okay. Another thing, here's a little trick actually. We could go into the creative tools again and use, where is my, that's interesting. Sun rays is missing. Have they done away? Ah, they moved it. Sun rays is up here in landscape. There we go. Okay, so sun rays, we can also work with twilight enhancer and water, of course, because we've got water here. So let's just see about that. If we add some blue and green into this water, okay, we can darken the water, which helps with the contrast. Okay, so keeping our eye away from the water into the boat more. Okay, and it's a little bit too blue. That looks good. And then we can do the twilight enhancer. Pick one of the presets. Let's do mauve. Okay. Now look what that does. Okay. Now it's darkening everything. We don't necessarily want to darken it that much. And we can also work on dawn. No, not liking that one. I do like emerald. I like emerald a lot. Okay, so I'm just going to dial it back. It's doing some weird masking things on the sky there, so I'll take a look at that. Let's see, we got mask refinement. There we go. See how that's affecting the sky over there? Okay, so there's Twilight Enhancer. And let's just see, I want to make it a lot more subtle. Like so. And I'm going to do an overall mystical because I like it. Something like that. You could also get into a LUT on this one. So a LUT is in the mood tool, which just gives you another tint or another tone. And I talked about earlier cyan and blue, or teal and orange is a really common kind of set. Okay, so you can get looks like this. Let's dial this one back. This is a really common sort of thing that people do, is this teal and orange look. So you're literally getting rid of almost all the other colors and just having those two tones. Right? It's actually not a bad look for this image. Right? So there's our before and after. Right? I still want to blur that sky more for some reason. I don't know. It's just bugging me. Let's just do a little bit of Gaussian blur. And I had the mask still pasted or copied. Let's try motion blur, actually. Okay, because when we have the angle at 0, it's going sideways. See how that's blurring the clouds? It's blurring the boat a little bit. I'd have to go in and do some more masking, but that's kind of a neat idea. Okay, so it gives that a sense of movement in the clouds. We could do the same in the water as well. If you wanted more movement in the water, let me just dial this back. I'm just going to go with Gaussian. If you want movement in the water, okay, side to side, look at that, okay. And we're going to do mask AI because it does find water. It should, okay. There we go. See, it's going to need some refinement on that one for sure because we're missing half the boats and whatnot. Object select. We could try and do a minus on this one. Let's do a subtract. We definitely don't want the boat. Yeah, it subtracted everything. So I'd have to go in and do some manual masking on this one to give me the boat back, or just brush it in where we want it, right? So like so. Let's get this boat. So we're missing the post too. It's kind of a neat effect though, actually. I usually go along the shore just to make it not so blurry there. And this is definitely one where I would zoom in a little bit. Okay. That's actually kind of a neat effect. What do you think? Okay. We could dial it back a little bit if we don't want it quite so obvious. It's kind of neat. I have to say, I think I kind of like that. Definitely don't want the boat blurry. How much time do you spend on an image is another good question. I get that a lot. Let's do a survey, Rob. Can you come up with a quick survey? I want to know on average, how much do you guys spend? How much time do you spend editing one image? Is it 5 minutes? Less than 5 minutes? Let's give them a few choices. Let's do 0 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, or more. I think you can have 4 choices, right? Hey, Andrew, nice to see you. Love it. Do you like the blur effect that I just did there on the water? I kind of like it too. Marguerite likes the golden hour look on the boats. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, nowhere close to being ready to do a poll. Well, get ready. I threw that at him. I just threw that at him. Threw him in the deep end there. Okay, so now that I'm done, I can take this back to Lightroom. So there's lots of things that I would take my images into Luminar to do that you can't do in Lightroom. This blur effect, definitely one of them. The color harmony and the color contrast is another tool that is only in Luminar that I love. You can't do that kind of thing in Lightroom. You can get close maybe with that calibration tool that we talked about earlier. Okay. Stephanie says photo editing often depends on how much work it needs and what I want to bring out. I think also how important is that image to you, right? You know, is it something that you think you might want to hang on your wall or something like that? I edit a photo and leave it for a few days and come back and look at it, try again. That's a great idea as well. Yeah, really great idea. Right. One thing I am going to do now that I'm back in Lightroom is I'm going to try a mask on the sky here and see what it does for sky. And just either lower the texture or denoise it, because I feel like it's just noisy. And the color is just a little bit off. The color is just a little off, so I'm just going to try a different color. Something like that. Okay. Dehaze will take the contrast out as well. I could have used dehaze in Luminar. That is in the landscape tool. Okay, so if I wanted to do dehaze, I have to go to the landscape tool. And where are we? There we go. So see what that's doing? Just sort of minimizing that contrast, because your eye will go to contrast, right? So there's our before and after. I think I'm happy with the cropping and how we ended up with a bit more sky than water, right? Let's see. Andrew says, Stephanie says she does the same thing as Marguerite, leaves it for a few days. Andrew does the same thing. I like to edit quickly to try and capture what I saw in the photo to begin with, and then come back later. Awesome. Well, I don't know why when you weren't logged into Studio. I don't know how you were doing stuff here. Okay, so Rob says a poll is up. So go ahead and answer the poll that is on the screen. And you can really see in this before and after how I applied that teal and orange LUT to give it those tones. Well, I think we've done a lot here. The only other image of Kim's, or the only other image that I want to mention, Lee had one. Which one were you talking about, Lee, where you wanted to lighten the foreground and then it didn't have the same feeling? Was it the beach one? Because you mentioned Normandy, which is kind of a cool image. You definitely the French flags, or was it this one here? Because I think it was the beach one, right?
Well, fun. We lost Arlene, but she knows that she's not there and she's trying to resolve the problem. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to sit here and entertain everybody till she gets back. So let me just check in. I'm going to mute myself. No, I don't think I can entertain everybody, David. I don't even know what to talk about. Well, as everybody knows, we're standby. We have got a problem on our end, and we're going to say goodnight. We're wrapping up the stream. Thanks for everybody for attending. Really sorry for this. Probably a new computer thing. Not sure, but I'm going to go find out. See ya next week.